the void of existence. Have you ever felt like nothing really matters? Like you're just existing, but not truly living? Like everything around you is happening, yet none of it actually touches you? As if you're in a movie, but not as the protagonist, just an extra, barely noticed? If so, you might be closer to the ridiculous man than you think. No, this isn't an insult. It's a warning. Dostoevsky wrote about him over a century ago. But the truth is, this character never stopped existing. He walks among us. He could be your friend, your neighbor, the person sitting next to you, on the bus, or he could be you. The ridiculous man isn't just a fictional character. He is a state of mind. He is the one who has lost the light in his eyes, who looks at the world and sees nothing but an endless repetition of meaningless days. One day begins, another ends. People talk, but their words mean nothing. Life moves forward, but inside, he already feels dead. And if you still don't recognize yourself in this, let me ask you, how many times have you mindlessly scrolled through your phone, watching videos without really watching them, jumping from one distraction to another without absorbing anything? How many times have you been surrounded by people, yet felt lonelier than ever? How many nights have you stared at the ceiling before sleeping and thought, what if I just stopped? This is what we're talking about. The ridiculous man didn't become like this overnight. He wasn't born without purpose. He lost himself, piece by piece. Day after day, something in him disappeared. Maybe he tried to find meaning in things that were taken from him. Maybe he believed he'd be happy once. He got that job, that status, that relationship. But when he finally did, he realized the emptiness was still there. So he gave up. And that's the most dangerous part. Because when you give up on the inside, no one notices. You still smile. You still answer messages. You still do what people expect from you. But inside, nothing. And now, tell me, is this just fiction? Or are we surrounded by people like this? Or worse, have we become like this without even realizing it? The ridiculous man and his decision. There comes a moment in life when we stop fighting, not because we choose to give up, but because we realize nothing matters anymore. For Dostoevsky's ridiculous man, that moment arrived silently. He didn't wake up one day and decide to end everything. It was a process, a slow erosion of the soul, an invisible weariness that pushed him to the edge, to the final point, the absolute certainty that nothing made sense anymore. He didn't scream. He didn't ask for help. He didn't dramatize his pain. He simply made the decision with the coldness of someone who no longer feels anything. He looked at the world around him and saw a stage play. People chasing things that didn't matter, fighting for status, for money, for recognition, all so superficial, so predictable. And he asked himself, for what? Why keep playing this farce? But here's the most disturbing part. He wasn't sad. On the contrary, he felt a strange peace, as if he had finally found the answer. And the answer was the end. If life has no meaning, why prolong it? He didn't want to scream to the world about his suffering. He just wanted to disappear, silently, as if he had never existed. And this is exactly what makes this story so real. Because in most cases, those who are at rock bottom don't act like in the movies. They don't cry all the time. They don't ask for help. They don't leave dramatic goodbye letters. Absolute despair is silent. It doesn't arrive with explosions. It installs itself slowly. It becomes routine. It turns into a habit. And you? How many times have you ignored a friend who seemed quieter than usual? How many times have you watched someone drift away and thought, they're just going through a phase? How many times have you felt emptiness inside yourself and chosen to pretend you didn't? The ridiculous man's story isn't just about him. It's about all of us, about what we ignore, about what we choose not to see. But then, something changes. Just when he is about to take the final step, he falls asleep. And in his sleep, something happens. Something that changes everything. The dream and the perfect paradise. At the decisive moment, he falls asleep. It seems like an insignificant detail, but it's not. This sleep isn't just biological. It's symbolic. It's as if, for a moment, his mind stopped trying to understand reality and opened itself up to something beyond what he had ever known. And in that state, he doesn't find the end he expected. He finds a new world, but not just any world. A paradise, a place where humanity has reached its purest form. No pain, no suffering, no lies. A place where people live in complete harmony, with no need for laws or punishment. What's most impressive isn't just the peace of this world, but the fact that it exists effortlessly. No one has to fight to be good. No one has to be convinced to love. Goodness is natural, fluid, inevitable. For the first time, he feels something he has never experienced before. Wholeness, not temporary joy, not fleeting satisfaction, but the deep certainty that everything is exactly as it should be. Life is not a burden. It's not a battle. It's simply beautiful. And he does something he never thought he would. He surrenders. He allows himself to believe that happiness is possible. And this makes us wonder, what if, on some level, we are all waiting for this moment? What if we spend our entire lives searching for something to make us feel complete, without realizing that we are looking in the wrong places, because what he finds isn't wealth, it's not status, it's not power, it's something much simpler, and yet much harder to achieve. But here's what changes everything. This paradise isn't eternal. It doesn't stay perfect forever. It's not immune to human nature. And what happens next defines everything. The fall of paradise. Perfection never lasts. At first, it seems like it does. The ridiculous man looks around and sees people living without envy, without hatred, without lies. And he believes. He surrenders to that harmony as if he has finally found what he always searched for. But then, something happens. Small, discreet, almost imperceptible. A single lie. Just one. A tiny distortion of truth. Insignificant at first. But, like a crack in glass, it starts to spread. Someone hides a thought. Another feels a selfish desire. A misplaced word. A suspicious glance. And suddenly, the perfect paradise begins to change. At first, he tries to ignore it. He wants to believe it was just a mistake, an insignificant slip. But he feels it. A strange tension in the air. A discomfort growing slowly. People start looking at each other differently. Before, there was absolute trust. Now, there's doubt, fear, suspicion, and then the realization hits him like a storm. He was the one responsible for this change. He brought the lie into that perfect world. And now, the paradise collapses. Love turns into possession. Generosity becomes self-interest. Trust fades into fear. And this raises the inevitable question, was this destiny or a choice? And even more importantly, if this paradise was real, would we destroy it too? The revelation and the awakening. And then he wakes up. But something is different. Something he can't ignore. The feeling of that ruined paradise doesn't disappear. The shock of seeing perfection crumble, of realizing that the corruption had always been inside him, stays lodged in his mind like an invisible scar. He hasn't just returned to reality, he's returned changed. Before, he believed the world was the problem, that life was a meaningless mistake. Now, he understands something he had never considered before. The problem was never the world. The problem was always him. And that truth hits like a punch to the stomach. He spent his life waiting for something external to give meaning to his existence, for the world to change, for people to be different, for happiness to come from outside. But now, he knows. Nothing out there can fix what is broken inside. And this leads us to an uncomfortable question, one we don't like asking ourselves, because it's not just him, it's you, it's me, it's all of us. How many times have we blamed the world for our failures? How many times have we looked at society and thought, if things were different, I'd be happy? How many times have we postponed life, waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect opportunity, the perfect version of ourselves to magically appear? But Dostoevsky forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. There is no paradise. There is no perfect world. And if there were, we would be the ones to destroy it. Because the problem isn't the environment, it's our choices, our inability to live without dragging our past wounds into the present, our tendency to ruin everything we touch because we carry fear, selfishness, and the need for control inside us. So what now? What's left? The ridiculous man is no longer the same. He woke up, and he understands now that he can't escape reality, that running doesn't change anything, that closing his eyes doesn't solve anything. The only way to find meaning in life is not to wait for a perfect world, but to learn how to live in the imperfect one we have. And you? When will you wake up? What this means for us? True redemption. The ridiculous man woke up, but he didn't wake up the same. He realized that the question was never, why is the world like this? But rather, why am I like this? And that's the question we should be asking ourselves. Every single day, we spend our lives waiting for things to get better, waiting for people to improve, waiting for something outside of us to save us from the chaos we feel inside. But what if the problem was never the world? What if our search for a perfect paradise was just an excuse to avoid confronting ourselves? Dostoevsky gives us the answer no one wants to hear. The meaning of life is not in finding a perfect world, but in learning to live in an imperfect one without letting it destroy us. True redemption doesn't happen somewhere else, in some other version of reality. It happens now, here, in every single choice you make. So the real question isn't whether the world can change. The question is, can you